The Supreme Court ruled on Doma and also Proposition 8 in California, and they have decided that Doma, the Defense of Marriage Act, is unconstitutional, which paves the way for same-sex marriage. This means that same-sex couples in states that have legalized same-sex marriage can now enjoy the same federal benefits and federal rights that heterosexual couples enjoy. Also, they have decided to dismantle the same-sex ban in California, which is just great news as someone who lives in California. I'm very, very happy for the gay community, and it shows me that there is some progress in this country. And I should also note that they made these rulings a day after a disastrous decision on the Voter Rights Act. So at least, you know, we have a little bit of an upside here, and I wanted to get everyone else's thoughts on this. Nikki, what do you think about the ruling?
I'm so excited. I think it's, you know, a big step forward. Baby steps sometimes, but you know, when it comes to something like this, it is a big deal. It's a big decision. I'm so happy. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. I live in the gayer part of town. I'm sure if people research the gay part of LA,
West Hollywood?
I live in West. So I'm always conflicted about sharing that with the audience because like Jake has made me paranoid. He's like, never tell anyone where you live. But I live in West Hollywood. It's not like a tiny area, so you're not going to find me. But
for the straight girl, and they'll find you.
So I was doing my morning jog through West Hollywood,
she
and
jogs.
oh no.
Yeah, now we have two things to come find her.
But there were a group of people cheering outside, and it was just a really great feeling. Ryan, share your thoughts.
I think it's great too. I think if you were to examine it in the courting process, say like of the marriage, like as a metaphor, I would say it's probably like only a second or third date. I think it needs to be. I think it needs to be a federal law that people can get married, or anybody can get married anywhere. I've always told my ex-girlfriends that I wouldn't get married until it was a federal law that gay people could get married everywhere.
Was that just your excuse so you wouldn't have to do the commitment?
Maybe it started off as an excuse, like maybe 8, 9 years ago, but now I feel like it does feel crazy that you can invite your gay friends to your wedding, and they're just sitting there knowing they can't do it. And well, it's what, 12 states and DC. So hopefully California will get back on board with that. It just seems crazy to me that that kind of happened, that it went back. But I think it is great news.
Definitely. Julianna, don't you feel overjoyed at the fact that gay couples can now go through the torture of marriage like straight couples?
Absolutely. They can return the gifts and have those things canceled right off the bat. The whole thing kind of makes me feel a little odd because it is a state, they're doing it state by state, right? So now I'm like, oh my God, I agree with the Tea Party for states' rights, right? Because they're always talking about, well, states' rights, we have to bring everything back to the states. But in this case, states' rights is actually getting us progressive victories. Like, so states passing these things on their own, you know, are trumping the federal government's slow inability to kind of, you know, take a lead in this area.
I hope the same thing happens with marijuana.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
well, let's just hope the federal government doesn't bust down the door of chapels marrying gay people like they're doing on clinics because of the, you know, because of the difference between the state and the federal law. I mean, Washington, the state of Washington, I was just there this past weekend. I mean, talk about heaven on earth. You've got recreational drug use, although you can't buy it or you can't sell it, but you can use it. Like someone can just give you, hey, marijuana magically appeared. I can just give it to you. Like maybe you put your shoe out like Saint Nick when you were a kid. But I think the gay marriage thing, I think probably by 2015, it will be federal law. That's my prediction. I think 2 years from now, it'll probably be federal law.
That's probably a fair prediction.
Yeah. But the Supreme Court, I feel like they're like an abusive boyfriend. Like they're like, one minute they're like attacking you, and the next minute they're like, oh baby, I'm gonna buy you some gifts. You know, because.
Well, Scalia is livid about this decision. You know, many news outlets have quoted some of the more egregious things that he said during this ruling, and he feels like it's really no place for the Supreme Court to make this type of decision, that it should be left up to the states, and you know, he was in favor of the Defense of Marriage Act. But you know what? Sorry, you can't deny progressivism. And the one thing that I will say about this is, I think that this should be a very loud message to conservative Republicans. And I know that there are younger members of the Republican Party, you know, people like Meghan McCain that have, you know, kind of rejected, me too, people who have rejected conservatism, but they still have Republican roots, which is understandable. They're more logical and reasonable to deal with. But then you have people in the Republican Party that hold on to that conservatism that society has already rejected. I mean, they got badly beaten in the 2012 election.
Yeah.
And I think that this should be another message that reinforces our rejection of conservatism.
Yeah, and I especially think coming off of the decision for for voters' rights, I feel like I had lost so much hope in that moment. Like we're gonna discuss that. I felt so I was so sad about that. So when this happened, I go, oh, okay, well, maybe there is a little bit of hope for, decisions that are being made.
Right. And for those of you who might not know, the Voter Rights Act was passed in 1965, and basically it would focus on southern states to make sure that they do not discriminate against black people when it comes to the voting process. If they make any changes in their voting process, they would need to get it approved by the federal government. And recently the Supreme Court ruled that we don't really want to emphasize the southern states anymore. So they essentially gutted the Voter Rights Act of 1965. But
they were saying things like, well, there's institutional racism isn't there anymore. And I'm thinking, it wasn't just to end institutional racism, right? It was to end just general racism, to put laws. And then we have Paula Deen, slithering out from under the woodwork with her racist views. I mean, it's obviously still there. It's still happening.
I'm from South
everywhere.
Georgia. I'm from South Georgia. When I go home, I'm made fully aware of the racism that's in this country every time I go home.
I'm only Italian, and when I go across, they're like, "What's going on with you? Who's that?" I like my own. It's just like it's on the whitest end of the spectrum of who you can be racist against, but still.
Centralized white people in power telling us that racism doesn't exist.
I know, that's so true.
Whether it's sports team mascots or that there's no such thing, we don't need affirmative action. I'm ready for the Supreme Court to be gone. I think that's the real progressive. I don't think appointed people for life, a life of power, I can't wait until that's no longer a thing. It's just the centralized white power. I mean, now I sound like
Thomas, but he's still like a really conservative person. It's centralized conservatism that's really the problem.
And I will say, I will say that I like the idea of you have to earn trust back. That's the one thing I really liked about this at the end of the day, is it's like, in any relationship that you have, whether it's with a husband or a friend or a coworker or, our justice system, if you do wrong, you have to work to earn it back in order to get the rights back. We haven't done that.
Yeah.